I have heard this pandemic used as a running metaphor many times, especially for ministers. Now, I need to be clear that I don't actually know a lot of ministers who are runners, so I don't know how effective of a metaphor it is, but it is used all the time anyway. In the very beginning, we were told it was a sprint, to lower the curve. We just had to do it for a few weeks. And then people started comparing it to a triathlon. You need to be able to swim, bike, and run. You need to be able to worship online, lead through Zoom, and do pastoral care remotely. And you had to train very fast for this triathlon. Then inevitably, it became compared to a marathon. It's not a sprint, it's a marathon. We need to prepare for the long race. Conserve your energy so you have enough to get to the finish line. Well, now there's a current article that's going around for ministers that is saying that we are now in the second marathon. The idea is, okay, you've run the marathon, you're almost done. Okay, there's the finish line. But what's that? Right when you think you've gotten there, there's what? A second marathon. But I wasn't ready for 2 marathons back to back. Too bad. There's your next marathon anyway. Get your head in the race and keep running. Maybe that's why I never wanted to become a runner. The running metaphor isn't very helpful for me. It just makes me feel exhausted. I actually prefer the phoenix metaphor far, far more. I mean, and how appropriate, right? How cool is it to live in a city that is named after a mythological, inspirational, super cool creature from mythology from ancient Greece and Egypt? Wow. A creature that's been featured in superhero movies, Harry Potter movies, a symbol that when we reference it, we know what it means. I never really knew what Orlando meant. Phoenix is way cooler. I've had other times in my life that I've needed to be a phoenix. Times when in my life has been reduced to absolute rubble due to situations, some that I've chosen and others that I had no control over. And I've been reborn, taking what I learned from that past life and creating a new way. I've always come out of those situations, and usually I come out better, certainly more self-aware, and I like to think I've become more enlightened each time. But it does take going through the painful burning process to get there. At my age, I've actually almost become comforted that new life will arise from such situations. When I was younger, I really thought that life would be over after them. Now I know and have experience of the rebirth that comes after. So I am proposing the metaphor of the phoenix to think of this time. We are burning. The old bird has to die. It is time. The climate, the pandemic, the conspiracy theories, the oppressive ways of thinking have shown us that the old ways need to be stripped away. It is not sustainable to live like this. And I believe this is true about Unitarian Universalism and the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Phoenix as well. For decades, we've needed to figure out new ways of moving into digital worship. Well, we figured that out, didn't we? For decades, we've needed to think about how to engage children and adults in faith education in new ways. Well, we're doing that too. We've known that we need to grow outside of our physical reliance on a building, one location that is gorgeous, but is just one location. We're doing that too. We know that church attendance is decreasing across all denominations. Actually, Unitarian Universalists, it's decreasing less than most others. And that the faith classification that has the majority of people in it now is none, not N-U-N, N-O-N-E, no faith practice at all. And we know that for those people, if they are willing to consider faith at all, Unitarian Universalism is a very attractive solution. So the old phoenix is burning, and the transition is painful, uncertain, full of fiery chaos, and a big old dose of anxiety. But here's the key about the phoenix. Not only is it reborn, it takes what it has learned and it brings it into its new life. What do we want to be reborn as? What do we want our faith to be? What do we want to become if we are given the opportunity to be called to our higher selves? Our higher selves. I use that term a lot, but what does it even mean? Sometimes it means big actions or thoughts. Sometimes it means living intentionally in the details. Now, I'm going to tell you a secret. My family and friends have an expression, maybe a game, called Reverend Christine Ruins Everything. Yep, they call it Reverend Christine, even though it's often my kids, because they know it is my Unitarian Universalist self that is speaking when I ruin whatever they're going to be talking about. It could be as innocuous as telling them what the ritual of the May basket or dancing around the maypole means when they have memories of doing it as a child. Hint, it's all about sex. Reverend Christine ruins everything. It may be correcting them when they use an expression like circling the wagons or crack the whip or gypped. Reverend Christine ruins everything. When someone references being grandfathered in, I make sure that they know the roots of that expression lie in Jim Crow laws that kept Black people from voting unless their grandfather was able to vote, which of course they couldn't because they were enslaved. Yep, Reverend Christine ruins everything. It's a joke, but it is also a way of living my values. It is an intentionality that I try to have in my life to make sure that my words match my values. I'm not trying to ruin the fun, but I am trying to live intentionally. Some people may call it politically correct or a snowflake or too many feelings, whatever. I'm totally fine with it because it shows that the love that I have in my heart is reflected in the words that I say and the actions I make. It is just one way that I can live into my higher self. Our UUA president and past minister of this congregation, the Reverend Dr. Susan Frederick Gray, has said numerous times that this is not a casual faith. This is not the faith that you just show up to and feel better, or the faith that tells you that everything is fine, just go about your day. Yes, we are not telling you that you're inherently bad, and we're not telling you that you have to do a certain act or believe a certain thing and you'll live forever. No, this is a faith for people who don't want convenient truths. This is a faith that tells us that we need to work just a little more to figure out who we want to be in this world. And it is the faith that says that doing that work matters. Now, indulge me as I go on a tangent a little bit. One of the great names in our Unitarian history is William Ellery Channing. He was a preacher in Boston in the early 1800s who really moved our faith and actually all liberal faith significantly forward. In 1819, he gave a sermon on the occasion of the ordination of a young minister, Jared Sparks, in Baltimore, Maryland. He created a vision of a new faith that wasn't based in the Trinity, which was a revolutionary departure of thinking of the time. He painted a picture of one God, a loving God, paving the way for the redefinition of our faith, and it is a pivotal point in our faith history. I believe that last spring, I heard the modern version of Channing's speech. It was given by the Reverend Dr. Sophia Bettencourt, upon the ordination of the Reverend Ali Kukichagali Bell on Zoom to a global audience. In it, she spoke of the promise and the hope of Unitarian Universalism. She reminded us that we have chosen to connect here, chosen to rise together in a community toward a future possibility that just might make us more whole. She told us that by calling forth our best selves, we can live our life representing a greater good. Basically, she urges us to create a living tradition that builds in love and trust and believing that we can take on even more. And most importantly, Reverend Bettencourt encourages us to ask a critical question. Who are we using as kindling to keep our chalices lit? Whose voices are we stifling so that some can be comfortable? Who are we keeping out because we are not intentionally welcoming them in? She says very clearly to us, let us never silence the inherent worth of the many for the habitual comfort of the few. Whatever Unitarian Universalism is right now, it inherently cannot be the best version of Unitarian Universalism. We believe we can be better, always better. This is one of the hallmarks of liberal faith. So what does that mean for us here at UUCP? What does it mean as we start a new program year? A year that is actually less clear of what lies ahead of us than last year was, and I couldn't imagine that last year could have been less clear. It means that in everything we do, we can search for what calls us to be our higher selves. Here's some examples. That in discussing how we might gather, that we take into account the most vulnerable of us, not the most privileged, the most safe, the least worried, or those with the least to lose. That we practice radical consent when we are determining how to meet in small groups, which means we will take the time to be curious about everyone's safety level, being intentional about creating space that is welcoming, and that we remember that it is the process that is as important as the outcome. That when we gather again, we will be very intentional about making sure it is always and forever accessible online in a way that feels inclusive and meaningful, not because we have to, but because we want to. That safety measures give us the opportunity to rethink how we structure our Sunday mornings. Because of the fact that we're going to need to have time to clean between services, it gives us the opportunity to have more faith development opportunities, rich conversations like we're having in our online coffee hours now, and different worship formats that may be appealing to folks who haven't attended UUCP more or want to do so more in different ways. And it means that we don't avoid conflict, that we work through it together, and that we can have hard conversations that we can't have in other places, but that we can have them with love, compassion, curiosity, and care. My beloveds, we are gathering today for the beginning of a year that we cannot predict. Planning is still canceled. We do not know what will happen, but we can know how it will happen because we are going to intentionally choose it. We will be reborn like the phoenix. May our new life be full of care, of daring, reinvention, and joy. So rise Rise, rise again like the phoenix. Let us all collectively and lovingly continue the work of Unitarian Universalism.